Madam Mayor, we are live.
Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, October 15th, 2020 meeting of the City of Keystone Heights. I'll call the meeting to order. It is 6:02. Ms. Rakowski, did you want to make a proposal?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if we could, under item number 7E, the Heritage Commission, included in your packets is the appointment of Ms. Carrie Collins. However, it was not added onto the agenda. If we could go ahead and add that there.
I'll entertain a motion to add the item to the agenda.
I'll move.
Is there a second? Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. So we will add that to 7E. Would you like to give roll call, Ms. Rakowski?
Absolutely. Did you want to start with a
Oh,
prayer?
yes. I'm sorry. Let me go back. A little disruption in the order of things tonight. We welcome Pastor Finley from First Baptist Church. He's technology savvy, and so we have leaned on him heavily these last few months for these Zoom meetings, and I thank you. We will start with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Finley.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Let's pray. Father, we come to you this evening. We're thankful again for technology that allows us to meet in a capacity like this, given all that's going on in our community around us. Lord, we pray for our community, especially these past few weeks. This COVID virus has hit a little closer to home. Many of us have friends, family members that are walking through this, and Lord, we pray for your protection, pray for your healing touch. Lord, we pray for our city leaders, our council, Lord, that tonight, as they meet, you would grant them favor, or you would grant them wisdom to know how to continue to lead this city through this challenging year. And Father, through it all, leaning on you for your grace and your mercy, Lord, as we enter into this election time, Lord, grant us your wisdom to know how to proceed, how to carry ourselves, Lord, that we be filled with grace, filled with compassion, looking forward to what you're going to do. We trust in your work. We ask this all in your name. Amen.
Amen.
And if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Rakowski, are you ready to call roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Mayor Lake.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hart.
Here.
Councilman Brown.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelly.
Here.
Councilman Peoples.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to item 1. Is there a motion and a second to read item 1 by short title?
I'll make a motion. We read it by short title.
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. Mr. Commando, would you read the emergency order, local state of emergency?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Resolution 2020-02, a resolution of the City of Keystone Heights, City Council of Keystone Heights, Florida, declaring a local state of emergency, adopting Executive Order 20-51, issued by the Governor of Florida, providing direction to the clerk and providing an effective date.
Any questions about the order?
Yeah.
Seeing no question, is there a motion to pass?
I'll make a motion. We pass. Second.
Seconded, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. Ms. Rakowski, do you have any public comment cards this evening?
We do have one, Madam Mayor. I have Mr. Hatch on the line. Mr. Hatch, can you hear us? Miss Mary, can you hear us?
Looks like Mr. Hatch is muted.
Miss Mary, Mr. Hatch, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can, sir. You are in with the city council. If you can please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Keith Hatch. I'm calling on behalf of Hatch Realty Services at 350 South Lawrence Boulevard.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead with your public comment.
The public comment that I have is in regards to the ordinance on mobile food vending and the acreage that states that it has to be at least 43,559 square feet or an acre. We are looking to have a food truck Friday event on our property, which has room for the truck, as well as probably about 7 or 8 cars parking behind the building in our driveway. And we were looking to have this, but noticed the ordinance and would like to ask if there's some way for an exception or variance to be made so that we can proceed with this event.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Madam Mayor, if I may, we do have Mr. Hatch and his event under item 3B. If you would like to switch over the events and we can handle that application first.
Okay. Food truck Friday. Did everyone have a chance to look at this from your packet? And are there questions of the city manager or of the applicant about this event?
I have a threshold question. What is the zoning class for your property, Mr. Hatch, or perhaps Lynn, you know that?
Central business.
CB?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but looking at the CB ordinance, it looks like because this type of use is permitted in CG, we could have a use by exception.
And
that's
so
that's the threshold. I'm sorry.
Oh, I apologize. And I have spoke to Mr. Commando about this. We do have a threshold of at least an acre of property. That's something that council had talked about a little bit at length when we drafted this ordinance and for specific reasonings. And so, Mr. Commando, if you would like to advise on how to move forward with the food truck on less than an acre.
If it's the will of the council, I would say that we would need to amend the ordinance and go through the public hearings to do that, since that's what brought it kind of into being.
I have a few suggestions on the ordinance. Looking at the ordinance more strictly now than I probably did when we passed it, how long ago, a year or so ago, I think the intent was to encourage mobile food vendors, but the ordinance is so strict, as Mr. Hatch has pointed out, concerning the square feet, that really you're excluding most private properties in the city and pretty much limiting this to public properties. So what I would be in favor of is basically saying, all right, if this is allowed under the central business, why not apply the same standards as apply to other businesses, brick and mortar stores, as far as square footage, parking, and so on. I just don't see any real reason to have a distinction for a business of this type vis-a-vis an established business. And I don't recall what the reasoning was for having the 1 acre. But that would be my comment. I've got a few other housekeeping things that I would like to see in the ordinance if we're going to change it.
And Mr. Vice Mayor, I only recall some of the comments being that the concerns that allowing mobile food vending without having them adhere to the same requirements that we did require of our restaurants had the potential to negatively impact our brick and mortar restaurants. I think because the level of following that was coming along with them when we discussed passing this ordinance originally was a concern, and there's also other municipalities in the Northeast Florida that had kind of gone through some of the same type issues, and that's why we, if I remember right, we borrowed some of the language from that to put this.
My view is if we're going to encourage this type of thing, and it's worked well in other cities, and especially if the lake comes back and we have more tourist businesses, I think this would be an enhancement to the area, and I think we could take another look at the ordinance itself and make it a little less draconian and make it more on par with other businesses in the same zoning class.
Any other questions or comments from council?
I have a few.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
In dealing with food trucks, in the way of cleaning them, and I know it's a big thing. I think the issue that I agree with our attorney, the reasoning behind that ordinance. And I think a couple of months ago, we decided as a council that we wouldn't be doing any type of events downtown due to the construction until spring. My thing is with putting a food truck in the middle of the town, what's that going to do with our restaurants that are already there, that are brick and mortar, and they're paying property taxes, they're paying rent that's probably an arm and a leg, and then we have somebody comes in that's not associated with like the 4th of July. Now the 4th of July, we bring in all these down here at the park. I mean, and before we go jumping off and spending time and money on changing an ordinance, I think we need to do a little bit of research on how this is going to affect the downtown in the way of our businesses that are already there, in the way of restaurants and stuff. When I read this over, when we got our packet the other day, the thing was we were pretty staunched about not having food trucks downtown. And and I know that we can always change stuff, but I think before we go changing something, we really need to think about it before we go jumping off. And I know where they're looking at putting it. I know there's parking there, but right now everything is pretty well tore up. So, and it will be that way until spring.
Any other comments, Mr. Peoples, Ms. Kelly? So I think there's maybe an interim step too, somewhere between what Mr. Hart's position is and what Mr. Brown's position, and that is those events are allowed on public property, and unless and until we have an ordinance that we want to if you want to review it, that's fine, but there may be an opportunity to host it at one of our properties where there is a lot more room and it would meet the current policy.
One more comment, if I might. Mr. Brown has raised a valid issue concerning parking. However, my reading of our ordinances are that we should be flexible, and if there's on-street parking, which we won't have for a while, that has to be considered. But there are a number of things to consider. Perhaps Mr. Hatch could come up with a little bit more of a business plan that he could submit to us as to specifically what he has in mind. The application is fine, but it doesn't have a lot of detail.
May I speak?
Yes, sir.
Can I share? Because I really didn't go in. I shared with the city manager, a brief general plan of the proposed event. I don't know if you all have that email. And if not, I would like to just share with you, because we are not expecting this thing to be a major party. The intent of this is to, one, bring the community together for food and fellowship, and not a major throwdown party in the middle of Keystone Heights. As I sit here at 5:30 and look out my window at Lawrence Boulevard, I see parking on both sides of the street. I see parking next to our building, about eight spots, all empty. And I also see about 7 to 8 spots behind our property. The purpose of this event, as I said, is, one, to provide community an opportunity to come together. 2, to draw new opportunities for awareness of city businesses, including Hatch Realty Services. The place would be right here at our property, food truck would be on our property, and the parking would be around our building. I've looked at the traffic pattern at this time of day. It's not busy. I do not see an issue there. And as I shared with the manager when I spoke to her, if we had this first event and it did cause major problems, we would work with the city to back off and rethink things. But I'm really not looking at having a problem. We are trying to be partners with the city in this, to draw foot traffic through the city and also to make other businesses known in the city. We're not looking at having this every Friday. We're looking at having this every other Friday. We are making it so that we will reach out to the restaurants in the area to see if they want to participate. Maybe they can cater an event. But we're not looking at just having a single one particular food truck here all the time. So that's where we're headed. Also, in talking to the manager, I understand that if this was a private event where we invited people and we paid for the service, that individual could come and cater. So I'm trying to understand why the acreage is holding us back from doing something when it appears that we have the logistics to do it.
May I speak again, Madam Mayor, concerning the parking? Taking a look at the existing ordinance where we control food trucks, it refers to, in addition to the acreage requirement, that it contain a principal building or use and has a minimum required parking as set forth in section 17-193. And not getting too far into the weeds, but I've got section 17-193 in front of me. And of the whole list, which is advisory only as I read it, I don't see food trucks, I do see restaurant. And the language of 17.193 is actually pretty flexible. It allows us wide latitude as far as parking. And in my view, at least, we could consider on-street parking, which after the projects are done this spring, there should be adequate parking. As Mr. Hatch has pointed out, this would be after normal business hours, so I don't think parking would be an issue. That's just my observation.
Very good point, Vice Mayor Hart. You know, the recommendation I think that we can make this evening is to ask Mr. Hatch back after this construction project is over and we could revisit it. What do other council people think about that idea?
I think that's fine. That's a good idea. But I was going to say that we have 2 restaurants in town, and this event's at 5:30. So there's only going to be 1 restaurant open during this time between 5:30 and 8 p.m. So it's not going to be a hardship on any of the restaurants in the city limits. So
Would it be permissible for me to get together with the city attorney and perhaps mark up a piece of legislation that we could at least consider at some point in the near future?
Yes, that would be okay with me. How about everyone else?
yes,
Whatever you think we ought to be looking at, that would be okay, Mr. Hart.
Just as a point of departure, so we've at least got something in front of us that might be a little less strict.
Okay, and I'll be honest with you. I think, you know, you should be allowed to do what you want with your property. But we also have said to other organization that we're not hosting any events downtown until the construction is over. And I think we would set, not a bad precedent, but we would be setting a precedent allowing an event to come downtown when we've said to others that we're not going to be hosting things. And so I would like to be consistent on that point.
Plus, we have the specter of COVID still hanging over our heads, so who knows?
So Mr. Hatch, would you be happy with Mr. Hart working on the legislation and then revisiting this after our construction is over downtown?
I do have a concern, timing-wise. We have just opened a business in Keystone Heights. This is a part of our promotional opportunity as well. So it's hindering our ability to promote our business with foot traffic and with a means and event that we could have here. I mean, I can understand if we call it an event but it may be that it needs to be just a private party. Because we cannot sit here and do nothing and not promote our business.
Understood.
Mayor, just
Yes,
to
sir.
clarify, the event can still take place and you can have it catered and you can still invite the public.
Yes.
The issue is just having the food provided by the food truck right now.
But the food truck could be the caterer, as long as we paid for it.
That goes against the ordinance that we have in place right now. And
So I guess my question to council is, what's the difference in a food truck and if I have my friend pull up with a smoker and smoke pork and do pork barbecue sandwiches?
Mr. Commando, would you like to address that one?
I think the idea of mobile food vending is the idea that the food truck's selling food. If you're catering an event, we can probably have a different discussion about that.
Okay, and so if the council decides that this will not work, our grand opening was going to be the Friday after Thanksgiving with Santa Claus here and with the food truck here. We will pay for the food truck, and the food truck will be our caterer, and whoever shows up gets free food as long as it lasts.
And depending on how many people you're anticipating at that event, you may need to go through the event application approval.
Okay, and I have an application event thing also with you all. But it will be a regular event because it will start, we'll have this every other Friday night. We will do this. So it will occur more than 8 times and less than a frequency of 7 days a week per the ordinance.
Irrespective of what the resolution of this is, I think it's still a good idea to take a second look at the ordinance and make it a little bit more friendly for situations like this. I don't have a comment on a private picnic versus a food truck, other than the fact that food trucks are regulated. I don't think private picnics are in the city.
Can we give him a waiver for the 11th, for the 27th event, and then keep working on the ordinance? We let him at least get his first party done on the 27th.
Because of the way our code's written, there's no such thing as a waiver of the code.
Okay.
Not like a variance.
Okay.
We could give him a variance and a conditional use permit. It would probably take 2 pieces of legislation or action, would it not, Council?
It would, and honestly, I don't know how he would present a hardship.
Property business.
Well, that would be a fact question we'd have to address if he applied for a variance.
Council, what would you like to do? Where are we?
That's what my question is. Where are we? Because I'm hearing 2 different stories. I mean, are we going to give him the okay to do it for a grand opening kind of thing and just let him do it like an open house? And my understanding, he's saying that he's going to have this food truck here. He's paying for it. He's providing the food until it runs out. There's no money exchanged in the way of customers. But it's still a food truck, and the ordinance says that the food truck is not allowed in that district of zoning until we. Is that correct?
It's allowed as a conditional use. We would have to approve it as a conditional use.
But my
Council,
thing is.
something?
Go ahead, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Ms. Wachowski, did you have a comment that you wanted to clarify something?
So if I'm understanding, then there's 2 items, and council's already addressed one, that they would like to take up the possibility of amending the food truck ordinance to allow it within our central business district. And that's going to take at least 2 meetings to go through the public hearing process to change that ordinance. The second item is the event itself, as he had stated that he wants to place to do a grand opening on his property and have an event. The Friday after Thanksgiving. With that being said, because it's an event on private property, I don't think that we can regulate him inviting people over. The question is that once it starts impeding into the public right of way, Mr. Commando, am I correct? And then in the conversation at hand, if he's going to go ahead and cater in his event, if this is an event, and if council will allow it prior to the end of construction.
I don't see any problem at all with having an event. I think it's a great idea. What my hang up is if a food truck is involved, I think we are ignoring our own ordinance, and I just think that's bad policy. There's got to be a way around it to make this happen.
Madam Mayor, and
Yes, sir.
Council, can I throw something else out here, because I'm looking at the ordinance as well. As I'm reading the definitions, and I read 11-52A3, it says mobile food vendor means any person or business selling food from a mobile food vending vehicle. If they're not selling the food and I have hired them to cater the event, then is that null and void? In other
Mr.
words,
Command-
Yes, that's what I said earlier. I said, but depending on the number of people attending, you may have to deal with parking, whether or not you need law enforcement to deal with traffic, things like that.
saying again, we are not going to be inviting the whole town. This would be something, again, that we just put out there. We'll have a sign out in the morning, food truck Friday. It will start at 5:30. It will end at 8. And it's not, we are not looking to have the old throwdown party with the beer truck and the food. It's just a nice, casual, informal, social event to pull a community together and also promote our business and businesses around us.
Mr.
And if
Brown.
we have to pay for the vendor, we'll do that.
Mr. Brown.
Okay. I'm not a lawyer by any means, but I do have a question. If you advertise it as a food truck being present at on your property, Rich, where does that put us with the ordinance? I mean, if he wants to have an event there, a private event or whatever for his business, that's to me one thing. But if you advertise a food truck, that's going against what our city ordinance is. And like the city manager says, that's a process we're going to have to do. It's not going to happen overnight to change an ordinance.
So, Councilman, can I ask another question? If I remove for this event, the November 27th, and we just call it our grand opening, and the food truck is here as a caterer, we're not promoting food truck on our signs and then on our advertising. We'll wait until City Council addresses the ordinance and hopefully sides with food trucks being allowed to do such events. At that point in time, we'll pull the food truck Friday out for our regular occurrence.
And I
I
forgot,
have a question. I'm sorry, I have a question of legal counsel. The ordinance that allowed this as a permitted use and as a conditional use in this particular zoning class refers to mobile food vendor. My recollection of the term vendor is that implies a commercial transaction where somebody gives value for something. If the truck is there and they're not selling, is that vending? Usually ordinances of this type that restrict conduct are read against, are strictly construed. And here, if legal counsel determines the word vendor implies a monetary transaction, I don't think we're regulating this particular event if there's no money changing hands. That's my view.
Because a transaction, when you walk up to the food truck, you're giving money, they give food. The food's already paid for. All they're doing is pushing it out the window.
Exactly. That's my point. And
Yeah.
so if I want to get a hot dog or whatever is going to be provided, and if I don't have to pay any money, is that vending?
no, that's what, I've said that a couple times.
And Mr. Commando, also, if it's a private event, would we even need to approve this application?
No, if it's a private event, it's no different than anyone having a picnic or party at their home.
All right. So I don't think we need to take any action on the application. I think we're pretty much in agreement that if this is a non-commercial transaction and a private party, that there wouldn't be a violation of the ordinance.
You can have your grand opening.
Mhm.
Madam Mayor and Council, I appreciate your time, and we will work with this. If we find that November 27th ends up being bigger than what we expected, we will work with you guys to figure out how we make this work in the future,
Okay.
even if it's changing locations.
In the meantime, I would still like to take another look at the ordinance and see if we can smooth out some rough edges.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a second event application under events. It would be the Kiwanis Christmas Parade. Ms. Rakowski, would you like to bring in Mr. Beals?
I'm here.
Mr. Beals, sorry it took so long. I thought we would have you out the door and back to your meeting.
That's all right. You guys
We
owe
have,
me a ton of beer.
Can't do that. We're a governmental.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
We're on duty.
Yep.
so are there any questions of Mr. Beal? Mr. Beal, why don't we ask you to tell us what you're proposing in terms of the reconstructed parade route? What are you proposing for us?
What it was is because of the, the streetscapes, what we've tried to do is put into an area where it's going to least impact as many people as possible, including, the neighborhoods. So what we did is we started it out basically as a staging area over on the bus staging area on the left of the high school where Grove is. And what we were thinking was come out of Grove, turn left onto Orchid, go down to Jasmine. From Jasmine, go down to Magnolia, and then back up Pecan, and then back down Orchard to the, back to the staging area. So that would be the whole route. What we would end up doing is putting the announcing area where the parking lot is, in right next to where the baseball and the some of the teachers and whatnot park in that overflow area, I guess, right across the street from the elementary school on the high school side of Orchid. And we would probably, with that said, most of that area going down Orchid and coming back up Pecan is virtually, Pecan was where we staged everything before, so we figured that would be a minimal impact there. And then really the only two areas that we would have is Jasmine and Magnolia that might impact the neighborhood at all. So what we've done is, again, propose that to you guys for the address, for the route. And then we also put together a letter that we can send out to all the residents that are impacted in that area. So what we would end up doing is sending that letter out, asking if there were any concerns. If there were concerns, we could probably put up some yellow tape in, on the back side of the sidewalks to try to keep people off of people's yards. With the sidewalks being public access, there should be no reason why people can't, set up there. My hopes are that most of the people are going to set up in the other areas on Orchid and on Pecan, and we won't have to do much. Now, in the letter, and I don't know if everybody's got a copy of the letter. Lynn, you're muted.
I don't see it in my packet.
Okay, I emailed it. What I can do is I can send it. Basically, that is it. I don't know how much you can see of it, but I will. It just says, "Dear homeowner, information message regarding this year's Christmas parade. My name is Todd Beals, the current president of the local region, Lake Region Kiwanis. We're the organization that coordinates and sponsors the Christmas parade each year. Due to the downtown streetscapes beautification project being in the works, we are unable to have the parade downtown. So we're working with the city to coordinate an alternate route and ensure we are able to continue the local tradition, and most of all, make sure Santa is there for the kids. The projected route is to start in the parking lot over at the high school, and it just runs through all the whole thing. And then it says, our hopes are that all homeowners and tenants on the parade route will invite friends and family over, enjoy watching the parade from your front yard. We plan this route to have minimal impact on homeowners, with parade watchers setting up their chairs in front of your homes. We understand that there will be people that will set up on the sidewalks of Jasmine Avenue. Because of the sidewalks are public access, we can't control people putting their chairs there for the parade. So if you have a concern about the parade watchers getting in your yard, we can help by setting up yellow tape barriers prior to the parade, or homeowners can set their chairs out in advance to fill those spots. The following morning, Sunday, our Kiwanis group and our Key Club members will be out to do the street cleanup. So that's the letter that I've put together to send out to all the residents. Hopefully that'll work. I'll email that to Lynn, and she can disperse it to you guys. And if you think there's anything else that I need to add to that, we can, go that route.
Let me ask if there are questions among council members. Mr. Brown, you have a question for Mr. Beals?
I'll go back to when we started talking about doing this through the neighborhood. I would highly suggest, Todd, that you get with our city manager and our public works supervisor and ride the route. And because I know over the past years, you've got the heights on some of these floats are pretty well up there. And we have some trees. I'm pretty sure there's one at Highland and Jasmine that comes across the road there a little bit.
Okay.
I know when I did Santa Claus and I'm on the top of the truck, that's going to affect him. But that's a pretty good route. But that area right there is the only thing that I can think of that there might be a tree close enough that might affect Santa and high floats.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns for Mr. Beals?
Just a disclosure, I'm a board member of the Kiwanis Club. I don't have any financial interest in this, and I intend to vote. In fact, I think I'm required to vote.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, Mr. Peoples, Ms. Kelly?
There's about 4 or 5 speed bumps, Mr. Beals. You know that on Jasmine, there's about 4 or 5 speed bumps.
I've driven the route, and I didn't, I suppose it could be a problem for some of the floats, but hopefully if they're going slow enough, we won't have any issues that will, cause any problems. I will go back through and double check how many speed bumps we've got, and I'll check them at all speeds.
Just wanted to let you know there was a lot of speed bumps on Jasmine.
I will. I'm going to go back through. I'll count them, see how I think it may affect it. Hopefully, it won't affect it at all.
I don't think it will, because the high school goes over those on Nightingale. There's 2, bam, bam, right there together.
Okay.
Nobody's fallen off yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Every once in a while, a bus driver will give the kids a wee ride, and they'll go fast over the humps.
Yeah.
The back, they go up and down.
All right.
All right. So, is there any other questions for Mr. Beals? If there are no other questions, is there a motion? Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve
Is there a
application.
second?
Second.
I second.
Excellent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for waiting and joining us when you could.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Two.
We're up to agenda item 4, the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the September meeting and the 28th, the 10th and the 28th meetings, the financials from July, and the payables from, August. Payables from August and financial from August. Is there a motion to pass?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Peoples. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. Ms. Rakowski, oh, busy one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In your packets, I have included to date our CARES Act expenditures. We have that separated into 2 pots. As you know, we have received $550,000 for the food distribution renovation, and then as well as $266,973 as our allotted amount under the CARES Act. To date, we have committed all of the $550,000 for the food distribution renovation. We have also committed about $150,000 of the total 266. We'll be doing bid openings for our Wi-Fi as well as our new server to be able to host all of our new equipment on Monday. And then that'll take a good chunk of that remainder of the $100,000.
I will say I look forward to seeing what the pavilion is going to look like, because I've never seen it the way it does look now, and it's looks a little naked down there.
So if there are no questions regarding the financial aspect of it, I'll go right into item B, the project update, if that's all right, Madam Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if you've been by City Hall this week, you'll notice that we do have, our council room is being decked out just a little bit more. Miss Mary is handling her brand new board. As we move into our in-person meetings, we will be able to live stream them out so that we can make sure that, one, we don't cut off capacity and that we are still accessible by the public. Like I said, we will be opening bids to add our Wi-Fi zones in here Monday. Those will be awarded, and we plan on moving quickly as that project closes out November 15th. We do have, you'll see some enhancements to all of our door handles and countertops, as we will have a protective coating over them, as you can find at the county buildings. Working with the airport right now, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on under their update. And then we are going to be purchasing picnic tables and benches for charging stations to promote distance learning and working remotely. Are there any questions regarding the CARES Act at the moment?
I have
No
none.
questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you for the update. We're under old business. Item A, 2020 updated roadway agreement. It should be 2021, correct, Ms. Rakowski?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I apologize. Our 2020-2021 roadway agreement update.
Would you like to present that item?
Yes, Madam Mayor. In your packets, you do, we have the amended contract for Michael Baker Services. The difference with adding on Hebron and the corner at Beasley
and Flamingo.
in Flamingo, I'm sorry, beam in Flamingo is $4,430, and then I'll work with Michael Baker for estimated costs of what that project will cost for construction. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to go ahead and amend that current contract so we can move forward with the bid process.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Move forward.
Thank you. We'll take Mr. Brown as the motion. Mr. Peoples, would you like to be the second?
I'll be second.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any questions of Mr. Bowles? Mr. Brown, do you have a question?
I have one concerning the one. Yes, ma'am. Concerning Beam and Flamingo, with Dunkin' Donuts being there, and the traffic there has really picked up. And how long will that take, and how are we going to deal with the flow of traffic at that intersection?
The milling and resurfacing of that should only take maybe 2 days, if that, if we sequence it right. I mean, they can mill it in one day and come back and resurface it another day. It's a really pretty quick process, and probably what we'll do is we'll just close Beam at the entrance, you know, where Dunkin' has already repaved Beam up to their entrance, and we'll just close Beam so you can't go through to Flamingo, and then we'll just use good, you know, maintenance of traffic on that intersection.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That would be a concern too. Then that means all that traffic will be pushed out onto State Road 100 for a period of time. Is that correct?
No, man, we shouldn't interfere at all with that. We'll stop the road. If we recall at the when they constructed Dunkin' Donuts, they did resurface a pretty good portion of Beam already. So we only have to go to that, and that does not block their entrance into their driveway or 100 at all.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rakowski, you're going to address the cemetery update?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and speaking with our engineer, Michael Baker, we would like to deviate from the purchasing policy again, and instead of going out for sealed bid for our ossuarium and setup, obtain 3 quotes to be approved by council. This is not something that's typically bidded out because it's really as a made to order. There's different things that can be chose from, so we will acquire those quotes and put them in front of council at the next meeting.
Is there any questions about what they're asking? No questions? Is there a motion to allow her to go get 3 bids?
I'll make a motion we allow.
I'm sorry, who was the first? I didn't hear.
There's a tie.
Is it tie? Tie goes to,
I will be the second.
okay. Mr. Peoples is the first and Mr. Hart is the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. So Ms. Rakowski, you can go get your bids.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, council. And thank you, Mr. Bowles.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bowles, for joining
Yes.
us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We are under committee reports. We have nothing for budget and finance. Is that correct, Mr. Brown?
That is correct.
Under growth management, Vice Mayor Hart, do you have anything for growth management?
No, I do not.
We are at the Keystone Heights Airport Authority. I didn't see Mr. Kirkland join us this evening. Is he?
No, he was unable to join us, and the airport manager, Ms. Hitt, was unable as well. However, they did brief me just a little bit. Ms. Hitt informed me today that the blimp that was scheduled to be at the airport did cancel at the last minute. They will not be there. Military training has picked up, so we should be seeing a lot of military traffic. throughout the next month, as well as drops. MHG Rockland will be flying more, and so that is a turboprop engine. Understand that their aircrafts are not crashing, as the last time that MHG Rockland did fly through, people were concerned that being a turboprop engine, that there was a commercial aircraft that was going to be landing on State Road 100, and that is not the case. Other than that, they are moving along. They're planning their grand opening of the FBO. We're also working together to get their technology up to date so that they can also host their in-person meetings come November. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything under planning and zoning, Ms. Rakowski?
I have nothing at this time.
Okay, and we do have an application under Heritage Commission. Vice Mayor Hart, would you like to present that item?
Yes, I would. Carrie Collins has applied for a vacancy on the Heritage Commission, and I believe you have her application in your packet. In brief, she's very highly qualified, being a licensed attorney. In fact, our ordinance suggests strongly that we have an attorney on the board. Not only that, she owns a historic home, and she's already become extremely involved in city business, including agreeing to be a board member of the Friends of Keystone Heights, which will be dealing with the anniversary. So I would make a motion that we accept her application.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Second. Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Ms. Rakowski, would you like to present the Peach Street school time parking?
Yes, Madam Mayor. In your packet, I have included an email from Mr. Lee Peoples regarding Peach Street parking. Also in your packet, I have included a letter from Superintendent Brodsky regarding the Peach Street parking. And then I did ask Public Works to go by the elementary school at the area that's in concern at different times of the day to snap pictures of what we're actually looking at, because this has been something that we've been dealing with throughout the years. And so if you'd like, Madam Mayor, I can go ahead and share those.
Please share the pictures.
Just one moment.
For the record, Lee Peoples is my brother.
I'm not sure if you're capable of seeing this.
Uh-uh.
Are you seeing slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this was just a couple different times throughout a couple weeks that I asked our Public Works to go through. You can see right here is the area of concern. This picture was taken at 14:30 on September 22nd. This picture was taken at 14:50 on September 22nd. This vehicle is the PSA, the crossing guard. You can see that I think that there's one back here. There's none at this time. The next slide is September 23rd at 8:17 in the morning. Again, this is the PSA car at 14:56 in the afternoon for parent pickup. You can see that there are cars that are parking within the right-of-way. The next slide, again, at 14:50 on October 1st, at 8:22 on October 5th. And then the last slide that I have is showing at 18:25 on October 5th, and then on October 6th at pickup, you can see that there's a car parked within the right-of-way. After traveling this area with Public Works, we did see that there are a couple of cars that are parking within the right-of-way by the no parking signs. It's one or two cars that are parking up at towards the front. Which is a huge improvement, and I understand Mr. Peoples' concern, but it is a huge improvement over the past years when Councilman Brown, you and I have been out there and it's been backed up throughout the entire street. I have spoke with law enforcement. They have come out a couple of times. They understand that there are parking under the no parking sign, the problem lasts for about 15 minutes at most after school pickup or during school pickup after school hours.
So the issue, and I've been involved for a period of time as well, the issue really isn't the morning parking because the elementary student body arrives at staggered times. So the only issue is in the afternoons when everybody leaves at the same time. So we're talking about, you know, that 2:50 to 3:10 or 3:05, that time frame. Anyone have any questions?
I have a few
I,
things. Go ahead, Tony.
Hang on, let me, one at a time. Mr. Brown?
I got a message just last night from Lee and requesting for me to come out and take a look at it around 2:30. I was there for probably about 10 minutes because I had to be in High Springs by 3:30, but there was no cars parked there. And like the city manager said, in the past, it's gotten really bad. So bad that the deputies were, you know, knocking on windows of cars and telling them they needed to move. But we've done our due diligently to put those no parking signs out there. And I haven't been by there as much during the afternoons as I was, but this afternoon there was nobody there other than down by where the PSA parks, and that's right there at the parking lot. So, I mean, I don't know how are we going to effectively get these people to quit parking there is a law enforcement issue. I mean, I think the city has done about all we can do in the way of putting up the no parking signs. I mean, we don't write tickets.
So, Mr. Peoples, do you want to go next?
Yeah, Lee has been concerned about this. He's worried about these cars that park front to front to front along his shoulder, and he's seen children dart out between these cars, and he's worried about them being smashed between cars and getting hit by cars. Because this is a very busy area at the end of school, and this is city property. If I'm not mistaken, this is city property. This is not school property. So maybe the issue is maybe they're not parking there as much as because they've had the crime scene tape up, and they're like, okay, well, I can't park there. Some of them got it, but this looks like to me more of a convenience issue, more of a safety issue over a convenience issue. And I don't think anybody needs to park there at all for any reason because it's a shoulder. So there's plenty of parking down at the other side of the school now, and so for them to park there, like I said, is more convenience than it is safety.
Let me go to Mr. Commando for a moment because I don't know if that's technically correct. We've posted no parking signs, but yet if you're a resident and you park in the street in front of a house, you can be ticketed in the city of Keystone Heights. And you're required to park on the right of way in order not to be in the street. So how do we reconcile those things?
I don't know that you can. I mean, I think having the no parking signs is one thing. I think a lot of the issue, as Councilman Brown said, is really enforcement. I don't know that there's anything more that we're going to be able to do. I mean, other than literally put up poles or things to physically prohibit people from parking there.
Is there any advantage in putting an exception sign there in place of the no parking? So for example, there's no parking except 2:45 to 3 o'clock. And that would make it okay for that period of time. And then anybody who does park there won't be breaking the law, and that might satisfy Mr. Peoples too.
I don't think that would satisfy him. It would still have the same problem with a lot of people at a lot of time parking there, and the city would be liable for anything that happened in that area. So I don't think parking at any time would be a good idea there.
Could we amend the ordinance to provide that there's the no parking restriction does not apply to permanent residents? Number one, and number two, we're characterizing this as a law enforcement issue, but isn't it also an ordinance enforcement issue? And if that's the case, perhaps code enforcement could come and tap on a few windows, and maybe even write a ticket. So I guess that's a comment or a question addressed to our city attorney.
You know, I don't know, because traditionally code enforcement is to ensure compliance of a property. I don't know how code enforcement would work for someone that doesn't reside at that property. I understand what you're saying.
Well,
What about, I'm sorry.
Mr. Brown?
Going back to what you stated a minute ago, Mayor, we're not allowed to park on streets, but there's several residents that do park on the streets, and they have been called. The sheriff's department has been called on them just for courtesy. And one, I'm not going to mention where it is, but it's a busy street, and people have to stop for the other cars to get around it. And the sheriff's department at that time said that it was legal; they could park there.
I've seen them ticket those cars too, though. I mean, I had a neighbor who was ticketed for parking in the street.
Well, that's what I thought. But we've called the law enforcement, and this was probably a year ago or so, and the sheriff's department didn't do anything. They said, they were, if they're so far back from a stop sign, they were all right. But if they were so close to a stop sign and parked in the street, that would warrant a citation.
That might be just an interesting, conversation after this. Mr. Commando, do you think you can reconcile those two things for us, whether it's a violation or it's not a violation?
Well, it's a violation of Florida statute under the traffic code, but there are many different types of laws that law enforcement has the discretion as to whether or not they're going to issue a citation, or even on some criminal charges, they have discretion as to whether or not they're going to pursue a formal criminal charge.
I have a question, Rich. Has the state of Florida preempted this, or under home rule and our police power, could we also regulate this as long as it's not a moving violation?
We could regulate it, but just remember the challenge with that is we don't have our own police force. So you would have to have an agreement with the sheriff's office to who would agree to enforce that aspect of the ordinance.
The second part of my question is, if the state has not preempted the field, could our code enforcement officer enforce this? I don't have an answer. I don't know, but I'd sure like to find out.
I can look into that. Like I said, traditionally code enforcement is against a property, which is why if there's lack of compliance, we put a lien on the property. I haven't seen code enforcement against an individual, and I'm not entirely sure how you would enforce that.
Enforce it against the vehicle in rem.
I don't believe statute allows us to do that.
Okay.
Can we send a letter to the sheriff's department and specifically ask them to cover this and look into this information, look into this area, and then have them tell us yes or no, so that if anything ever happens here, we're relieved of we're relieved of a little bit of a fault if anything happens here?
You can always reach out to the sheriff's office and ask them for help.
Put it on paper, say, okay, well, we can't do it because of this or this or this. And then, okay, well, if something ever happens, we can say, look, we reached out to the sheriff said we can't do it. We're sorry. And so the city's liability is lessened in this whole thing.
Well,
if anything ever happens.
Nothing would ever happen, but I imagine if some tragedy ever occurred, there would be a lot of finger pointing between the school, the city, whoever was actually involved, and things like that.
I'm just looking at. I'm sorry, but I'm just looking at lessening the city's liability in this, and of course, keeping a child from getting hurt or killed. That's all I'm looking at.
Mr. Commando, does that change if there's no sign there at all?
I'm sorry, does what change?
Does legal responsibility change if there's no sign there at all?
Honestly, Mayor, legal responsibility is very fact specific. I don't know that it changes one way or another. if somebody gets hurt, like for example, we have been sued as a city by a woman who claimed she tripped over a tree stump in a sidewalk. And we could show pictures that there was never any such tree stump. So, I mean, in theory, we shouldn't be liable, but even in that circumstance, it didn't stop us from being the defendant in the lawsuit.
So the answer to the question is we don't know the answer to the question.
You won't know, again, it's too fact specific to give a generalized answer. There's too many other factors. Was the car speeding that may be involved in it? Was the child in the middle of the street or on the side of the roadway? Again, there's fact specific issues that deal with liability.
Can we put more signs in between, because they think you're not going to park they're going to park in between the signs. They're going to say, well, I'm not parking on the sign, I'm parking in between. Can we put more signs in between the ones we have posted now?
That's the will of the council. Yes. I mean, you can put more signs up.
I'm not sure that more signs would help the matter. They're about 10 feet apart, 10 to 15 feet apart right now, and they're double-sided. So that there's a lot of signs that are already on that street.
What about chains? Put chains between the poles, between the signs. I'm just looking at
somebody would fall over the chain and really sue the city.
Yeah, sometimes the remedy is worse than the problem.
I would like an answer on the preemption question in the home rule and what our powers are to enforce this using our own system rather than reaching out to the sheriff every time.
Well, the sheriff knows about this problem. That's the issue. We've met the sheriff at the location a number of times. And like I say, the problem has gotten better since the first complaints, but it's not perfect. Ms. Rakowski, I see that you would like to just share.
Yes, Madam Mayor, that's what I was just going to reiterate, is that I have reached out to the lieutenant over traffic several times. They have made passes throughout the area. They were patrolling not every day, but they were out there throughout the opening of school. They're out here periodically, but they as well have numerous schools within Clay County that they have to patrol. So they are out here, and they do recognize that the problem is far less than what it was a couple of years ago. The parking lot there at the school has alleviated a lot of that. And comparatively speaking, we're in good shape, but I do understand that there's still an issue with one or two cars for a couple minutes after dismissal.
I was going to say that the school, as far as I know, have never actively told their parents not to park here, and that might be a helpful too. If the school would say you cannot park over there, and I'm rereading Superintendent Broski's letter, and he's basically saying the okey doke about this, and that's another problem. The school needs to say no, you can't park there. That is illegal. There's parking signs there. Don't park there. They need to be proactive.
Mr. Reynolds.
I will say to that statement is, when this all got in the open several years ago, we had several discussions with school administrators in Green Cove and in Keystone. And one of the biggest things was they were aware of the parking issues. The previous superintendent came in and I believe our previous school board member got with the Catholic Church. They had a new priest. They purchased property and made a bigger parking lot, and that's helped tremendously. We have, the school has in the past sent out letters in their the kids' packets and everything, telling the parents to stay off that road. That was not a drop off, and it was basically illegal to park there. And but it's just like people that have yard sales in their houses on the weekends. People are going to park everywhere. But like I said, I was there this afternoon. I didn't see much of any cars parking down that street, but that doesn't mean they won't be there tomorrow. And my question is, you've got probably probably about 4 or 5 houses on that street. Are they complaining also about the traffic or the parking on the side of the street?
Mr. Kowski, have you gotten any complaints?
No, the only complaint that I've received is from Mr. Peoples. Not saying that they're not there, but they just haven't come into City Hall.
And I too have done the same things as Mr. Brown discussed in terms of reaching out to Ms. Rakowski. Mr. Cornegay and I have met with the previous principal, but the current interim principal is also very much aware of parking. The issue for the parents is that there's a pickup point at a gate on the front side of that parking lot nearest to the school, and they're required to go and physically get out of their car and go get their kid, and they're kindergartners, and so you understand the importance. So these kids who are coming and parking there are usually with a parent anyway, and it's in terms of liability. I see parents walking their kids to their car all the time. I've made myself available at 3 o'clock to make sure that that's happening. So I really feel like we have done absolutely everything that we can. I'll be honest. I think everyone along the way has done everything they can, including the school board members, including the police department. The school police department has looked at it. The sheriff's office has looked at it. And I don't know that there's a whole lot more that we can do. So is there anything that anybody wants to propose? Anybody want to suggest something?
I mean, I've said more signs, I've said more chains. I don't know what else to do. Physical barriers seem to work.
And I'd like to find out if code enforcement could actually put some teeth in this, and if we write a couple of $500 tickets, if it might not solve the problem.
You have to spend that kind of money, it usually does. So can we then table this for this evening and ask Ms. Rakowski if you would work with Mr. Commando and follow up on the code enforcement issue and see if there's any teeth in that policy or in that practice?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. I'll put this on the November agenda.
Okay. And that moves us to the Veterans Honor Highway, Walker Road, State Road 100, road designation. This is an item from Mr. Peoples.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a highway designation that I am, some people may not know, I'm the adjutant and the financial officer of the Sons of the American Legion here in Keystone. And I proposed this highway designation, the Veterans Honor Highway. It will run from the Bradford County line on 100 to the Putnam County line on 100, a straight shot across. It will start at the beginning there by the cemetery where many of our veterans are buried. The AMVETS have chimed in, they're for it. The American Legion is for it. And apparently what we need now is we need a okey-doke or a commentary, what do you call it, from the city saying that we are okay with them doing this, designating this highway. And then we'll go to the county and they will do the same thing. And then we can send it to the legislature and say, okay, the city of Keystone Heights says it's okay. Clay County says it's okay. So then we can go ahead and move forward, because apparently in the past, people have been doing some of these highway designations without the consent of the counties and without the consent of the cities. And they have named some people for highways that weren't, they didn't like. So the legislature now requires us to do proclamations to say that we're in favor of this and we have no issue with doing that.
So can you tell us about the person you're proposing? Who is the person you're proposing?
There's no specific person, Mary. It's just a general overall highway designation for Veterans Honor Highway.
Okay.
It would be celebrating the lives of past, present, and in the future veterans, and so.
Okay.
I seem to.
It's my fault. I thought I'd seen Gary Cooper's name associated with this request?
No, yeah, I put it in the email that he was buried there, so that it would run past his grave. Or the sign would begin where the old cemetery is where he's buried, so it would be there.
Any questions of Mr. Peoples, Councilman? Yes, Mr. Brown?
You have to forgive me. I've been watching this Senate hearing stuff, so I got all kind of questions, like all them senators out there. But my question is, will that affect the name Walker Drive?
No, it will not change any names. We're not changing any names of roads or anything. It will just be a sign on the Bradford County line and a sign on the Putnam County line, those brown signs you see.
Right, right.
Where, that's all it would be. It would not change the names of any streets or roads.
If the manager could help me out here a little bit. Several years ago, we did a thing right across from Bald Eagle, a ceremony of the women's, I think not the women's club, but the garden club. Miss Jones did. Is that plaque that's there? That's like, I don't even remember what, it was some kind of memorial. That doesn't have anything to do with the highway, does it?
You're referring to the Moon Tree dedication?
No.
Are you talking about the Blue Star Highway?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's something that was purchased by the Garden Club, and it's just a sign that goes in, and it's not an official state designation. It's just a sign purchased by the Garden Club. So the state designation would not interfere with the Garden Club sign at all.
Okay.
They could be both.
Okay.
Does the legislature require a formal resolution, or would simply a letter from the city manager suffice?
Go
The
ahead,
county require us to do a resolution so that they can see that we are in favor of this within our city limits.
Well, I think it's excellent policy to do this, and I commend you, Mr. Peoples, for suggesting it. I would move that we have the city attorney prepare the appropriate resolution for our next meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Larry.
Council comments. Are there any comments this month? I can start with Ms. Kelly. Do you have any council comments?
No, I don't have any comments.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Since we're talking issues with parking and everything, something that Councilman Peoples brought up a couple of months ago, and it really hasn't gotten any better, is the golf carts not being just driven by adults, but by and not even teenagers. And today, before I came for the council,
children.
Yeah, the day before the council meeting, I was leaving my house, and there was a young boy that was on a go-kart.
Yep.
And he has American flag flying behind it. He's doing donuts in the middle of Orange and Jasmine, and then proceeds down our easement from Jasmine to Dove. So I really think that we somehow or another step up with the sheriff's department and let them patrol. And it's usually happening after school and in the evenings. And but I mean, like I said before, when this got brought up, about 1977, I had a dirt bike. I lived over where was I? Grove Street, and all that was dirt road. So we were out, me and a friend were out, and we got stopped and told we could not even be on the dirt roads. And that was in 1977. So I can guarantee you the laws have probably got a little stricter since then. And my thing is, these kids have no, I don't know what the word I want to use. They have no respect for stop signs. And I know several years ago, a family friend of ours had a son that had a go-kart, and did not stop and got ran over. So that when I saw that young man on that go-kart today, that just kind of was unedged, because cars don't see him, you know. Fortunately, he has that big American flag flying behind him, so you can possibly see him. But it's just they don't respect the traffic laws or anything like that. So I think we, as a council, need to step it up with the sheriff's department on doing a little more patrol. And
I agree with you. And I know where that young man lives. He lives over by me. He does. He lives on Fairway.
He's driving that far.
Yes. He lives on Fairway, and Deputy Santiago has visited his parents' house several times. So he's very well aware of who this young man is. And there's several young men who actually have the mini bikes, and they've moved from mini bikes to go-karts. And so we can ask Ms. Rakowski to make sure you get a message to Deputy Santiago that the young man is out and about again.
Absolutely.
Question for legal counsel. Of course, this would be a moving violation, so it would be the state or the county, it wouldn't be us. But would our disorderly conduct ordinance or ordinances come into play? And could the person be cited, or the parent be cited, in the event this conduct continues?
I don't think that disorderly conduct would apply to that.
Not leading to a disturbance?
I don't think so. I think the correct venue on that is your traffic citation with the county.
I agree.
Councilman Nichols, would you like to go next?
I just wanted to thank Councilman Brown for bringing that up. I know I walk the sidewalks a lot. I know Mayor walks a lot, and I know she's seen some of these folks doing some of this stuff with little 12 and 10-year-old children driving go-karts almost, and golf carts after dark. And I told you the story about the one going over the speed bump. So I'm glad that Councilman Brown brought that up, and we can maybe get this solved and get some of these kids, these children, off these. There's a place and a time for that kind of stuff, but not in the streets of the city of Keystone Heights.
Thank you. Mr. Hart?
Mr. Brown referenced the Senate hearings that he's been watching, and I've been watching them too, and it makes me appreciate the collegial way we get the business done, and we don't have any sniping back and forth that can really disrupt things. So I'm commending the council as a whole for the way we do business.
You're here.
Thank you. Thank you. And I've been super busy this past month. I'm not going to share a whole lot, only because I'm tired from those things today. Kiwanis has taken on a big project, and we're physically climbing ladders and getting things ready to paint, and so I'm tired. Ms. Rakowski, would you have anything to report?
Yes, I just wanted to give council a reminder that November 16th will be our next council meeting. It'll be a joint November and December meeting. I would also like to have a CRA meeting that night, as there are some other items that need to be taken up. Early voting is going to start next week, Monday. Early voting will be here at City Hall from October 19th through October 30th, with Election Day on November 3rd. And outside of CARES Act and getting the budget finalized, we've been quite busy here at City Hall. So if there's any additional questions that I can answer regarding any of those projects, please feel free to ask.
Anyone have questions? No?
Ma'am.
Is there a yes? Or no? Mr. Commando?
Just briefly, since the question was asked, I did look up the statute under 162 that deals with whether or not we can issue a citation through code enforcement, and the answer to that is yes, we can. Interestingly, it does require that our code enforcement officer give the person who's committed the violation an opportunity to correct the violation. I'm not exactly sure how that would apply to a parking type situation, but in short, the answer is yes, we could do something like that. There are other provisions that have to be put into place where we would have to give the opportunity for the person to appeal to county court. And I don't know, I've got to go back and look at our ordinances to see how we're set up, but the short answer to your question is yes.
So you have to afford due process, but you can affect a relief. Would council be amenable to asking the city attorney to draw an ordinance to that effect?
Sure, I'm amenable. Mr.
Yes.
Peoples is.
Yes.
I see Mr. Brown. Ms. Kelly?
I
Yes.
don't know that you need an ordinance. You probably have what's in place already.
Well, perhaps you could opine on that, let us know.
I can. That's what I said. Let me check through our ordinances. I believe it's already in place.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else before they go to the order? Anything else? Going once, going twice?
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I'll close the meeting at 7:28.